Baseball has had its share of colorful characters. From Bill Spaceman Lee to Barry Zito to the mad Hungarian Al Hrabowski, it's often left-handed pitchers that are at the top of this list. However, there is a southpaw who towers above all others with a unique confluence of extraordinary talent and bizarre biography. Rube Waddell. Over time, the legend of Rube Waddell has grown so large that any story about him must be taken with a grain of salt. However, the sheer volume of improbable stories coinciding with consistent themes makes it easy to believe that a large majority of the stories are indeed true. As an example, here are just a few Rube Waddell stories. He helped save a town in Kentucky from a flood, was bitten by a lion that he punched in the face, saved a woman from drowning while piloting a steamboat, got into an argument with a walrus, and the walrus ate his pants, had pet bears, one that he named Ty Cobb, once hit a foul ball that caused a bean factory to explode, ate live garter snakes, and wrestled alligators in a circus sideshow, was suspended for 5 games for jumping in the stands and fighting with a fan, was arrested for bigamy because he forgot to divorce one of his wives, who hasn't done that, missed a game because he was too busy posing as an animatronic mannequin in a department store, and another because he was leading a parade downtown Main Street. Beat that, Dos Equis guy. What is true and verifiable is Waddell was one of the greatest pitchers of the dead ball era. He won the pitching Triple Crown in 1905 with a 1.48 ERA, 287 strikeouts, and a record of 27-10. During that magical year, he also had a stretch of 43 2/3 innings of scoreless ball, and outdueled Cy Young, the pitcher who has an award named after him for excellence, in a 20-inning complete game, the second game of a doubleheader in which Waddell pitched both games, because I guess nobody had heard of pitch count in the 1900s. His talent was so extraordinary that on more than one occasion, he had his fielders either sit in the dugout or on the field while he would retire the side without a single batter putting the ball in play. He once pitched 6 shutout innings of a game, underhanded. Waddell was born in Bradford, Pennsylvania, on Friday the 13th, in October of 1876. You see, even the date of his birth had to be weird. Growing up in Bradford, he often told reporters that he built up his arm strength and accuracy by throwing rocks at birds on his parents' land. And it was his arm that would lead him to his first professional contract with the Louisville Colonels for $500, which he reportedly spent on a drinking binge, leading the Sporting News to dub him the Southpaw. Yes, Waddell really liked to drink. He made his debut just before his 21st birthday on September 8th, 1897. From the beginning, he was talented, but very raw. Living up to his nickname Rube, wasn't 100% clear on the rules of baseball, and, from time to time, would throw a fielded ball directly at a base runner in an attempt to record an out. He also began to earn a reputation as unreliable, as he would often leave the middle of the game to simply go fishing. In 1899, he was loaned to the Columbus Grand Rapids, where he became a fan favorite. Some stories tell tales of Waddell showing up 2 minutes just before first pitch in his street clothes. Upon arrival, he would climb down to the field through the grandstand, grabbing several hot dogs from fans along the way, eating them, and would wash them down with as many beers as he could grab from the fans. When he would reach the field, he would change into his uniform. This change was punctuated by the fact that Waddell never wore underwear and would unabashedly give the crowd an unobstructed view of a Pennsylvania full moon. That year, he won 27 games. When the National League reorganized in 1900, the Colonels' ownership purchased the Pittsburgh Pirates and moved their top players to Pittsburgh, including Honus Wagner, the player who dons the most coveted baseball card of all time, and Rube Waddell. However, while on this all-star team, Waddell's eccentric behavior was too much for the Pirates, and he was suspended in July. During this time, he played for Connie Mack's Milwaukee Brewers, who were in the Western League at the time, and on August 19th, pitched and won the first game of a doubleheader, a game that he won on a triple he hit himself in the 17th inning. And they want to bring the DH to the National League. Philistines. Mack, wanting to win the second game as well, offered Waddell a 3-day fishing vacation if he pitched the second game of the doubleheader as well, because one would suppose this was like being offered a brand new car in 1900. Waddell accepted, pitched a complete game shutout, then went directly to Pewaukee Lake to fish for the next 3 days. After his stint with Mack and the Brewers, Waddell returned to the Pirates to complete the season. But in 1901, the relationship was so damaged that despite Waddell's talent, the Pirates looked to ship him off to Boston. While this initial trade didn't take place, he did eventually get shipped off to the Orphans, a team in Chicago that would soon be known as the Cubs. Waddell proceeded to put up eye-popping numbers in 1901, pitching 243 innings with 168 strikeouts and a 2.81 ERA with Chicago. Despite this, his eccentric nature and his excessive drinking forced the Orphans to part ways with Waddell, and he was given his release in 1902. At the beginning of 1902, Connie Mack, now managing the Philadelphia Athletics in the newly minted American League, and desperate for pitching, had gotten wind that Waddell was pitching for the Pacific Coast League in Southern California. Remembering Waddell's excellence in Milwaukee, he made a move to bring Waddell into the fold. Now, today this would mean reaching out to Waddell's agent, making an offer, and going over the fine points of the contract before first-class travel arrangements to Philadelphia. That is not how Connie Mack rolled. Mack sent 2 private investigators from Pinkerton to find and kidnap Waddell, drag him to Philadelphia, and then place him under house arrest. It was a simpler time. Mack was set on straightening Waddell out, realizing the talent he had while still protecting him from himself. This ultimately meant that Connie Mack would put some peculiar riders into Rube Waddell's contract, and in an effort to keep him from drinking, he would often have Rube Waddell stay with him in his hotel room before a big game. This, however, didn't always work out, as Connie Mack tells a story about one time when Rube Waddell just left the hotel room for 5 minutes to make a call. But in those 5 minutes consumed 5 luscious milk punches that he bribed a bellboy for, and some additional drinks at the bar before returning to the room. Posting a line of 24-7, 276 innings pitched, 210 strikeouts, and a 2.05 ERA in 1902, that year, Waddell became just the second pitcher in professional baseball to throw an immaculate inning, striking out 3 consecutive batters on just 9 pitches on July 1st in a 2-0 win over Baltimore. Going into 1903 after a brief flirtation with football, Waddell reported to spring training where he roomed with his battery mate, catcher O.C. Schreckenghost. There, O.C. complained about Waddell's habit of eating bags of shelled peanuts before bed and covering both bedspreads in the shells. This, in addition to wrestling alligators at the local bayou, forced Connie Mack to modify Waddell's contract to ban him from these activities. Once the season began, Rube was on fire. Pitching 324 innings with 302 strikeouts was impressive, but perhaps not as impressive as his off-season starting in September. After the baseball season, he spent time touring America in a vaudeville play called The Stain of Guilt, in which he played the hero. In his role, he would toss the villain around, a job the giant Waddell was well equipped to do, while reciting lines that he could never remember and would often improvise around. During the stint, he saved co-star Rachel Action from drowning in the Ohio River, near Maysville, Kentucky. While traveling to a city for the next performance, she had flipped overboard an excursion steamer, one that Waddell was piloting at the time for some reason. After one of the performances, he reportedly engaged in a wrestling match with George Miller, the actor playing Chalk, the newsboy, a match that ended with Waddell accidentally shooting Miller in the hand. The reviews were not kind to Waddell, most describing his performance as so bad it's good. The detractors wouldn't have to wait long, though, as Waddell's poor money management and drinking led him to get into an argument with the director, which led to Waddell quitting the play at the end of October. And that night didn't end with him just quitting the production. After quitting, Waddell proceeded to wander over to another play down the street, where lions were being held in cages as part of the show. He walked into the den, picked out the largest one he could find, and punched it in the face. The lion, quite displeased, bit Waddell's hand. His left hand. His pitching hand.
Well, you get in a fight with a drunk, you don't hit him with your pitching hand.
And to cap the year off, he was found tending bar in Wheeling, West Virginia. One night while working, a fire broke out at a local bakery, and Waddell offered to help the fire department put out the blaze. During his assistance, he broke a window, lost his balance, and fell into a vat of dough. Why not? 1904 saw a further increase in Waddell's pitching dominance, and also featured glimpses into the caring nature that laid beneath his beastly exterior. On July 1st of that year, the A's were visiting the Boston Americans for a 3-game set. During the game, Boston pitcher Jesse Tannehill drilled A's center fielder Danny Hoffman in the head with a fastball that knocked Hoffman unconscious. As players gathered around in shock, confused as what to do, Waddell rushed from the dugout, pushing everyone aside, picked up Danny, and carried him over his shoulder across the field, where he flagged down a carriage and took him to the hospital. Throughout that evening, Waddell sat by Danny's bedside in uniform, holding ice to his head. It was noted that if not for Waddell's quick actions, Hoffman likely would have died. While 1905 was Waddell's greatest year as a pitcher, it was also bookended by insane events only achievable by Waddell. And at the center of it all was Waddell's greatest nemesis, the demon drink, alcohol. In February of 1905, he was living with his mother and father-in-law, and in what was par for the course, was drinking heavily for days. This jag came to a head on February 8th when Waddell's father-in-law asked him for some money to pay for room and board. Waddell, finding this unacceptable, hit him in the face with a flat iron in a bit of Three Stooges-esque slapstick comedy that knocked his father-in-law's teeth out. Horrified, his mother-in-law tried to intervene, only to be knocked unconscious by a chair that Waddell wielded like a bat. With the small bit of sobriety that he had left, Waddell realized he was in trouble, and he boarded a train to leave town before a warrant for his arrest could be issued. Back in Philadelphia under the protection of Connie Mack, 1905 was Waddell's breakout season. He had finally become a pitcher and not just a thrower, reserving his devastating fastball for when he needed it and pitching to contact instead of trying to strike everyone out.
Strikeouts are boring. Besides that, they're fascist. Throw some ground ball. More democratic.
Rube Waddell's amazing 1905 season could be surely exemplified by his performance on Independence Day, July 4th, against the Boston Americans, where Waddell beat Cy Young in a 20-inning complete game. This is an amazing performance for a few reasons. Number one is that Waddell actually pitched in the first game, albeit he only came in as a reliever, but still, imagine today your prized ace pitching 2 back-to-back games of a doubleheader in the middle of the regular season and then letting him pitch 20 innings in the second game. The second is that Waddell actually fell behind early, giving up 4 hits and 2 runs in the first inning, but then Waddell bore down and proceeded to put up 19 goose eggs, completely shutting down the Americans' offense for 19 innings. And then the third is this. After the game, having pitched 20 innings in the swampy Boston heat, his second game of the day, he celebrated the victory by doing cartwheels all the way from the pitching mound to the local pub where he tried to trade the game ball for free drinks. It was a simpler time. While pitching lights out, even while dodging alimony payments and warrants, Waddell still managed to have a good time. According to Connie Mack, in late August while in St. Louis, Waddell spent the night at an amusement park, drinking copious amounts of booze, which led him to knock on Mack's hotel door at 1 a.m. Mack groggily answered the door to see Waddell standing outside holding a foul-smelling sandwich. Waddell offered Mack a bite of the sandwich, which he called pizzaza. The sandwich consisted of Limburger cheese and stale onions. Mack, not surprisingly, turned down the offer to partake in the pizzaza and went back to bed. Well on their way to a World Series appearance, the A's leaned heavily on their ace Waddell. But due to an incident on September 8th, he would not appear in a single World Series game. While traveling, the team changed trains in Providence. There, Waddell began to insult fellow pitcher Andy Croakley over a straw hat. Croakley took offense to this, and a scuffle ensued, resulting in Waddell destroying the hat. A fight then broke out between the two pitchers, and during the fight, Waddell fell and injured his shoulder, making him unable to pitch effectively for the rest of the season.
Oh, this is the worst looking hat I ever saw. Well, you buy a hat like this, I bet you get a free bowl of soup, huh? Oh, it looks good on you, though.
Trying to come back, he pitched 2 of the last games of the regular season, but was so ineffective that in the last game, he dropped his glove to the mound, climbed the outfield fence, and dejectedly watched the rest of the game with the fans in the bleachers. Incidentally, there's an unsubstantiated theory that Waddell, who would win the Triple Crown and outperform all other pitchers that year, was paid off by gamblers to fake the injury so he wouldn't pitch in the 1905 World Series. The New York Giants beat the A's in 4-1 on the strength of the Giants staff led by ace Christy Mathewson. By 1908, even Connie Mack had had enough of Waddell's eccentricities. Nearly all of his teammates had threatened to strike if he'd stayed on the club, forcing Mack to sell Waddell's contract to the St. Louis Browns for $5,000. The Browns' owner, Robert Hedges, followed in Mack's footsteps in trying to protect Waddell from himself by hiring him as a hunter in the offseason to keep him out of trouble. Finally, in 1909, Waddell's professional baseball career had come to a close, and he was sold to the Minneapolis Millers at the end of the year. 1909 was the last time he pitched professionally. During the end of his short life, he had one final act. In 1912, at spring training with the Millers, the town of Hickman, Kentucky was threatened by a flood. Waddell, on short notice, volunteered to stack sandbags in the freezing water for over 13 hours. Waddell was found in a bar at dawn after the sandbagging, where a patron noted that Waddell looked like he had been up all night. Waddell responded deadpan with, "I have. I saved your little town for you." In 1913, Waddell was diagnosed with tuberculosis and was placed in a sanitarium in Elmendorf, Texas. He died on April Fool's Day, 1914, at the age of 37. After some former teammates had found that he had been buried in an unmarked grave, they pitched in to purchase a tombstone for him that read, "Rube Waddell had only one priority, to have a good time." That he did.
Hey, everybody, we're all gonna get laid.